Welcome to This Explainer. We're going to kick things off by challenging a really deeply held modern myth. We look around at massive material wealth, shiny skyscrapers, lightning-fast tech, and we just automatically assume, well, this is it. This is the absolute peak of civilization. But what if we're measuring it completely wrong? Today, we are unpacking the true dimensions of civilization, and I promise you, by the end of this, you are going to look at global progress in a totally different light. So here is our flight itinerary for today. We're going to cover 4 main stops: the global matrix, the Scandinavian secret, the antidote to anomie, and finally, tech as a time machine. Let's dive right in. We usually measure progress by GDP or some massive technological leap, right? We literally rank countries by their economic output. But let's just hit pause for a second and ask, what actually makes a nation truly civilized? Is it really just the economy, or is it something way deeper about the human condition? The historian Will Durant honestly hit the nail on the head here. He defines it as a social order which promotes cultural creation. He reminds us that civilization isn't some economic finish line. It's an integrated social order. It's an environment that elevates human potential. And because of that, no single nation holds the ultimate crown. It's more like different cultures have mastered entirely different pillars of society. Okay, Section 1, the global matrix, breaking down the 4 dimensions of civilization. Think of global civilization like a giant puzzle, where different cultures have essentially mastered completely different pieces of the human experience. You've got the behavioral dimension, championed by nations like Japan and Singapore with their incredible discipline. Then there's the institutional dimension, completely led by the Nordics, focusing on justice and welfare. We also have a really deep social and spiritual dimension rooted in the Middle East and Latin America, all about solidarity and family. And finally, the ecological dimension, pioneered by places like Costa Rica and Bhutan, focusing on true sustainability. Let's look a bit closer at that behavioral dimension in Asia. The crucial takeaway here is that civilization isn't about what the state hands out to you. It's all about voluntary discipline toward the public good. In Japan, there's this core sociological concept called wa, which means social harmony. Literally from childhood, individuals are trained that their value comes from harmonizing with the group and avoiding meiwaku, which is causing inconvenience to others. It's a society built entirely on civic duty rather than just individual rights. And this sets up a super fascinating contrast. Western societies mostly rely on what we call vertical control. Police, surveillance cameras, heavy financial fines imposed from the top down to keep order. But the Asian behavioral model, it relies on horizontal control. The community basically polices itself. The internal fear of social shame, of letting your neighbors down, is actually way stronger than the fear of getting a parking ticket. And it creates these exceptionally clean, low-crime environments without needing constant, heavy-handed enforcement. Now, if we skip over to the ecological dimension, we see a totally different approach. Nations like Bhutan and Costa Rica practice intergenerational equity. They operate on this really profound philosophy that we don't own the earth. We're just its temporary guardians. Bhutan famously even replaced GDP with gross national happiness, measuring progress based on mental health, ecological preservation, and cultural protection. They proved that destroying nature for a quick economic buck is actually the peak of backwardsness. Moving right along to Section 2, the Scandinavian secret. Let's see how Northern Europe engineered institutional civilization. To really get the Nordics, you have to grasp a concept coined by the sociologist Gösta Esping Anderson: decommodification. It's a big word, but in this model, it just means your right to advanced healthcare, higher education, and dignified elderly care has absolutely nothing to do with your value in the labor market. Basic human rights are entirely shielded from capitalist supply and demand. And that completely redefines the relationship between the state, the free market, and you, the citizen. So how on earth do they afford this? Well, it's through this brilliant tripartite structure. These 3 pillars, an organized labor market functioning as a conflict partnership, sustainable long-term economic planning, and extremely comprehensive public welfare, they all work together like a perfectly synced gear system. It's managed collaboratively by governments, employers, and unions to protect citizens from the massive external shocks of globalization. And the real secret ingredient here is a concept explored by Asimoglu and Robinson called flexi-security. Sounds like a total paradox, right? The market is flexible. Companies can easily hire and fire workers to adapt to tech changes. But the citizen is secure. They get really high unemployment benefits and aggressive state-funded retraining. Flexi-security essentially cures the fear of the future. People actually embrace technological disruption because they have this incredibly high universal trust that their uncorrupted institutions are going to catch them. Let's head to our third segment, the antidote to anomie, exploring the social and spiritual dimensions of civilization. So, while Western and Asian models achieve incredible material and civic success, they often struggle with a pretty dark side effect: anomie. The sociologist Emil Durkheim used this term to describe that modern sense of normlessness, alienation, and deep social isolation that's brought on by extreme, hyper-individualistic capitalism. But the Eastern and Latin models counteract this beautifully. They rely on immense emotional capital, familial warmth, and these huge extended networks to fight off the modern epidemic of loneliness. Take a look at this incredible example from Egypt, Ghadana. It loosely translates to spontaneous solidarity or chivalry. Over there, civilizational resilience isn't some government program. It's an invisible, highly efficient safety net. During a crisis, whether it's an illness or financial ruin, the community instinctively rallies together. They make sure literally no one faces extreme hardship alone. So even when institutional welfare might be weak, this raw human warmth acts as an incredibly powerful alternative. But here's the real challenge for these regions. To truly modernize, they shouldn't just import cold foreign templates that might erase all that warmth. Instead, they need to follow a few key steps. 1. Institutionalize that spontaneous charity into sustainable projects. 2. Expand the deep sanctity and love of the private home out into public spaces. And 3. Upskill their workforce to achieve that Nordic flexicurity we talked about earlier. And finally, our fourth and last section, tech as a time machine. Let's see how digital tools can revive civic identity. When we think of civilization today, we obviously can't ignore technology. But instead of just obsessing over the new, look at how we can use it to preserve the old. Imagine deploying this rapid-fire tech roadmap, using 3D LiDAR scanning to build digital twins of historic streets, using AI to restore and colorize century-old archives in stunning 4K, building interactive GIS for crowdsourced social history maps, and using blockchain to protect heritage IP. We aren't just hoarding old data here. We're actively protecting the spatial memory of our cities from being completely bulldozed by rapid urban sprawl. Imagine using augmented and virtual reality as a literal time machine on your phone. You could point your camera at a modern city square and see it exactly as it was back in the 1920s, overlaying the vibrant past right onto the present street view. You instantly bridge that psychological gap between the modern citizen and the ancestors who walk those exact same streets. Suddenly, history goes from being some dead textbook to a living, breathing experience that connects youth directly with their heritage. And why does this matter? It's actually profound. When youth visually and emotionally connect with the deep layered history of their own neighborhoods, it cures what urban planners call spatial alienation. When you feel connected to the legacy of a street, you claim psychological ownership over it. You don't litter on it. You don't vandalize it. Transforming visual history into ownership naturally breeds the exact same behavioral discipline and respect for public spaces that we saw earlier in Japan. So are we heading toward greater human civilization, or is rapid material progress actually making us lose it? As we wrap up this explainer, we've traveled from Japanese civic duty to Nordic welfare, through Middle Eastern emotional solidarity, all the way to AR time machines. And I really want to leave you with this provocative thought. As we tirelessly chase these massive technological milestones and build ever taller skyscrapers, are we remembering to build the true social, institutional, and emotional pillars that actually make us civilized? Thanks for exploring this with us, and keep questioning the world around you.